In the autumn of 1835, the crisis in Texas became visible through one small cannon. It was not a great weapon by the standards of empires. It was not the kind of artillery that could break a fortress or decide a campaign by itself. It had been given to the people of Gonzales years earlier for protection on a dangerous frontier. But by October 1835, the cannon had become something larger than iron. It had become a question. Would the people of Texas surrender their weapons to a government they no longer trusted? Or would they resist, even before anyone could agree what resistance truly meant? Mexican authorities wanted the cannon returned. From their point of view, the request was reasonable. Texas was becoming unstable. Settlers held meetings, formed committees, raised militia companies, and spoke openly against centralist rule. A government that could not recover its own artillery from a frontier settlement did not look like a government in command. But to the people of Gonzales, the request sounded different. It sounded like the first step toward disarming them. It sounded like proof that Santa Anna's centralist government saw them not as citizens with grievances, but as rebels to be subdued. When Mexican dragoons approached Gonzales, local residents delayed them. The ferry across the Guadalupe River disappeared. Negotiations stretched. Couriers rode out. Men came in from nearby settlements, carrying rifles, powder horns, and the nervous energy of a population that had been arguing for years and was now close to action. The rebels eventually raised a flag with the famous challenge, "Come and take it." The words were simple, but the meaning was layered. They were defying a military order. They were defending local autonomy. They were claiming that the old federalist promise of Mexico's Constitution of 1824 had been betrayed by Santa Anna's centralism. On October 2, 1835, the confrontation at Gonzales turned into a brief skirmish. The casualties were limited, but the consequence was enormous. The Mexican troops withdrew. The Texians celebrated. Across the settlements, the news spread faster than calm judgment could follow. The Texas Revolution had begun. At first, many insurgents did not say they were fighting for independence. That is one of the most important details in the story. A large number claimed they were defending Mexican federalism against Santa Anna's dictatorship. Tejano Federalists could support that cause. Anglo settlers who had sworn loyalty to Mexico could support that cause. Men who were not yet ready to declare separation could still take up arms under the banner of 1824. But war has a way of simplifying political language. Once shots are fired, every camp begins to sort people into friends and enemies. Mexican commanders saw armed resistance. Texian volunteers saw proof that force could work. Moderates still hoped for reform, but the ground beneath them had shifted. Stephen F. Austin, once the great mediator, now accepted command of Texian forces gathering to move against San Antonio de Bexar. Gonzales had answered one question, but raised a much larger one. If resistance had begun, where would it stop? San Antonio de Bexar was the old political and military center of Texas. It held missions, plazas, roads, storehouses, and symbolic authority. To take Bexar would be to tell Mexico that the revolt was not a local disturbance around Gonzales. To hold Bexar would be to control the heart of Mexican Texas. But the Texian army moving toward Bexar was not a professional force. It was a gathering of volunteers, farmers, hunters, recent immigrants, Tejano allies, ambitious men, suspicious men, idealists, adventurers, and local leaders. They brought courage, but not always discipline. They elected officers, debated orders, came and went according to personal obligations, and often distrusted anything that sounded too much like regular army authority. Austin had to lead men who were not naturally inclined to be led. His task was not merely military, it was political, emotional, and practical. He had to keep the force together long enough to matter. Inside Bexar, General Martin Perfecto de Cos, Santa Anna's brother-in-law, commanded Mexican forces. Cos represented the centralist authority that many Texans feared. He had troops, a defensive position, and the prestige of national power. But he also faced a hostile countryside, stretched supply lines, and an enemy that did not need to defeat all of Mexico at once. The Texians only needed to make Mexican control of Texas look fragile. As the siege developed, the countryside around Bexar became a world of patrols, scouting, rumors, and sudden clashes. The mission conception fight in late October showed that Texian volunteers could stand under fire. Men like James Bowie gained reputations in these actions. Bowie was already a legend in frontier circles, a man whose name carried violence, confidence, and myth. In Texas, myth could travel almost as quickly as fact. The siege dragged on. Weather, boredom, shortages, and uncertainty wore on the volunteers. Austin left for the United States as a commissioner, seeking support for the Texas cause. Command shifted. The movement still had not fully decided whether it was Federalist rebellion, independence movement, or something in between. Then, in December 1835, Ben Milam helped push the Texians toward assault. Milam's call asked who would go with him into San Antonio. Enough men answered. Street by street, house by house, they fought their way through Bexar. It was close, dangerous combat, far removed from the open symbolism of Gonzales. After days of fighting, Cos surrendered. Mexican troops withdrew south. Texians had captured San Antonio. The victory seemed stunning. A volunteer army had driven centralist forces from the most important town in Texas. Many believed the campaign was essentially over. Some men went home. Some leaders began to think about political organization. Others looked toward the Alamo, the old mission compound near Bexar, as a place to garrison and defend. But victories can create dangerous illusions. The capture of Bexar did not mean Mexico had abandoned Texas. It meant Santa Anna had been challenged in a way he could not ignore. In Mexico, the rebellion was not seen as a heroic stand for liberty. It was seen as insurrection, foreign influence, and a threat to national sovereignty. Santa Anna would not answer it with petitions. He would answer it with an army. Antonio Lopez de Santa Anna understood theater, speed, and punishment. He had risen through the unstable politics of Mexico by sensing where power was moving and placing himself at the center of it. By 1835 and 1836, he had become the face of centralism, determined to break resistance not only in Texas, but wherever Federalist challenges threatened the authority of the national government. The rebellion in Texas offended him politically and personally. It challenged Mexican sovereignty. It involved settlers from the United States. It threatened to pull a vast northern province away from the Republic. If Texas succeeded, what would stop other regions from defying Mexico City? What would stop the United States from absorbing more territory? Santa Anna chose a winter campaign, a decision that stunned many observers. Moving north across harsh distances was difficult even in good weather. His army had to cross deserts, rivers, cold plains, and long supply routes. Soldiers marched with limited food, worn clothing, and the burden of a campaign meant not merely to defeat rebels, but to make an example. The Texians badly misread the danger. After the victory at Bexar, the revolutionary cause was divided. Some wanted to invade Matamoros, imagining that the war could be carried deeper into Mexico and perhaps gain support among Mexican Federalists. Others wanted to defend Texas itself. Political leaders argued. Military commanders disagreed. Volunteers drifted between projects. The consultation and provisional government struggled to create authority in a place where authority had always been thin. At the Alamo, a small garrison remained. The mission compound was not a modern fortress. Its walls were old, broad in some places, weak in others, and difficult to defend with too few men. But it stood at San Antonio, and San Antonio stood on the road into Texas. To abandon it felt like surrendering everything won in December. James Bowie arrived. William Barrett Travis arrived. David Crockett arrived with Tennessee volunteers, already carrying the glow of national celebrity. Each man brought a different kind of reputation. Bowie had frontier fame and local connections. Travis had ambition, discipline, and a fierce sense of duty. Crockett had political fame, humor, and a story larger than the man himself. Their presence made the Alamo more than a military post. It became a gathering point for personalities, expectations, and fatal decisions. Bowie and Travis shared command uneasily. The garrison needed reinforcements, supplies, and clarity. Instead, it received uncertainty. Sam Houston, appointed commander of the Texian army, had little patience for trying to defend exposed positions without sufficient men. He understood that a small force could be destroyed if it tried to hold every symbol. but Houston did not yet command enough obedience to impose a clean strategy on the revolution. Santa Anna's army approached faster than many expected. In February 1836, Mexican troops reached San Antonio. The defenders withdrew into the Alamo. The siege began. The siege of the Alamo lasted 13 days, from February 23 to March 6, 1836. In later memory, those days became legend. But before they were legend, they were cold mornings, dust, fear, arguments, sickness, cannon fire, urgent letters, and men looking over walls at an army far larger than their own. Travis wrote appeals for help. His most famous letter declared that he would never surrender or retreat. It was a powerful piece of wartime rhetoric, but it was also a cry from a trapped commander who understood the math. The Alamo needed reinforcements. Without them, courage could delay the inevitable, but it could not change it. The defenders included Anglo volunteers, Tejanos, and men from different parts of the United States and beyond. They were not a single simple category. Some fought for Texas independence, some for federalism, some for land, honor, comrades, or momentum. Some may have understood the full stakes, others were swept into them. Inside the compound, Bowie fell ill. Travis shouldered more of the formal command. Crockett became one of the faces of morale, whether in exact fact or later memory. Outside, Santa Anna tightened the ring. Santa Anna raised the red flag of no quarter, signaling that those who resisted could expect no mercy. To him, this was a campaign against rebels. To the defenders, it confirmed the terrible seriousness of their stand. The siege became not only a military event, but a contest over meaning. Yet while the Alamo held attention, the revolution's political story was changing elsewhere. At Washington on the Brazos, delegates gathered. On March 2, 1836, they declared Texas independent. The timing was extraordinary. While men were trapped in the Alamo, a new republic was being announced on paper. The Declaration of Independence gave the revolution a clear political shape. The language shifted from defending Mexican federalism to separating from Mexico altogether. That shift mattered deeply. Tejano federalists who had opposed Santa Anna now had to decide what independence meant for them. Mexican leaders saw confirmation that the rebellion was not merely reformist. The United States watched a new slaveholding republic appear on Mexico's frontier. On March 6, before dawn, Santa Anna attacked. Mexican columns moved against the walls. The fighting was brutal and close. The defenders were overwhelmed. By morning, the Alamo had fallen. The military result was clear. Santa Anna had destroyed the garrison. But the political result was more complicated. The defenders' deaths became a rallying cry. News of the Alamo spread fear, anger, and determination. The phrase, "Remember the Alamo," would carry the dead into every campfire conversation and every march that followed. Santa Anna had won the battle, but he had also created a symbol that his enemies could use. The Alamo was not the only disaster that shaped the revolution. To the southeast, at Goliad, another Texian force under James Fannin faced its own crisis. Fannin commanded men at Presidio La Bahia, a strong position near Goliad. He received calls for aid, including desperate appeals connected to the Alamo. But decision-making was slow, communication was poor, and the strategic situation changed faster than orders could settle. Fannin hesitated, moved late, and became trapped by the advance of Mexican forces under General José de Urrea. Urrea was not Santa Anna. He was a capable commander whose campaign along the Gulf Coast was effective and relentless. He defeated scattered Texian forces and kept pressure on Fannin. The war in Texas was not only Santa Anna at the Alamo, it was a broader Mexican campaign to break the rebellion across multiple fronts. In March 1836, Fannin's men were caught in open ground at Coleto. They fought hard, forming defensive positions on the prairie, but they were surrounded, exposed, and short of options. After negotiation, they surrendered. What happened next became one of the darkest moments of the revolution. Santa Anna's orders treated captured rebels as pirates or unlawful combatants. Urrea reportedly urged clemency, but orders from higher authority prevailed. On March 27, 1836, Palm Sunday, Fannin and hundreds of prisoners were executed near Goliad. The massacre horrified Texians. Like the Alamo, Goliad transformed defeat into rage. It convinced many that surrender offered no safety. It gave Sam Houston's army another cry. Remember Goliad. For Mexico, the executions were intended to enforce authority and deter rebellion. For the Texians, they became proof of tyranny. For later historians, Goliad remains a reminder that revolutions are not clean moral plays. They are fought by governments and insurgents making decisions under fear, ideology, law, revenge, and ambition. The effect on civilians was immediate and terrifying. As Santa Anna moved eastward, families fled. This became the Runaway Scrape. Roads filled with wagons, children, livestock, household goods, exhausted women, elderly relatives, enslaved people forced to move with owners, and men torn between protecting families and joining the army. Rain turned roads to mud. Rivers became obstacles. Panic spread. People did not know whether Houston could stop Santa Anna. They only knew that the Alamo had fallen, Goliad had ended in death, and Mexican troops were coming. The revolution had become a test, not just of soldiers, but of society. Could a new republic survive before it had truly been born? Sam Houston was one of the few men in Texas who understood that survival could matter more than immediate glory. Houston had lived a complicated life before Texas. Soldier, politician, governor, exile, adopted member of the Cherokee world, and restless figure moving along the edge of American expansion. He was dramatic, flawed, physically imposing, and politically shrewd. In 1836, he inherited a military situation that would have crushed a commander who cared more about applause than victory. After the Alamo and Goliad, many wanted Houston to fight at once. They wanted revenge. They wanted him to stand between Santa Anna and the fleeing families. They wanted proof that the Texian army was not simply running. Houston retreated. To his critics, retreat looked like cowardice. To Houston, it was strategy. His army was small, poorly trained, and emotionally volatile. Santa Anna's forces were more numerous and advancing with confidence. If Houston fought too early and lost, the revolution might end in a single afternoon. If he kept the army intact, he kept the republic alive. The retreat was miserable. Men grumbled, civilians cursed him, political leaders doubted him. Mud, hunger, exhaustion, and fear pressed on everyone. Houston drilled when he could, moved when he had to, and waited for the moment when Santa Anna might overextend himself. Santa Anna made that mistake. Confident after the Alamo and Goliad, he pushed east, splitting his forces and pursuing the fleeing Texian government and army. He believed speed and pressure could finish the rebellion. But speed can also isolate an army. By April 1836, Houston's force reached the area near the San Jacinto River and Buffalo Bayou. Santa Anna came close with a portion of his army. The two forces were now near each other on low, marshy ground, with waterways, tall grass, and trees shaping the battlefield. On April 20th, there were skirmishes. Both sides tested the other. The next day, April 21st, Houston made the decision that would define the revolution. In the afternoon, while the Mexican camp rested and did not expect a major assault, the Texians advanced. Their battle cries carried the memory of recent disasters. Remember the Alamo. Remember Goliad. The attack at San Jacinto was sudden, fierce, and devastating. In a matter of minutes, Santa Anna's army collapsed. The battle itself was short, but the killing and pursuit were severe. Houston was wounded. Mexican soldiers were captured or killed. Santa Anna fled, disguised himself, and was captured the next day. The prisoner was not merely a general. He was the president of Mexico and the commander who had marched north to crush the rebellion. In Texian hands, Santa Anna became the key to a political settlement, or at least to the appearance of one. San Jacinto won Texas independence in practice, but it did not settle the future. Under captivity, Santa Anna signed agreements that called for Mexican withdrawal and recognized, in effect, Texas independence. But Mexico's government rejected the legitimacy of agreements made by a captive president. From Mexico's perspective, Texas remained a rebellious province. From Texas's perspective, the battlefield had spoken. That unresolved contradiction would sit at the center of North American politics for the next decade. The Republic of Texas now existed, but it was fragile. It had land claims, debt, diplomatic problems, defense problems, and deep internal contradictions. Tejanos, who had supported the revolution, often found themselves marginalized in the new order. Indigenous nations faced continued pressure from settlement and military campaigns. Enslaved people saw the new republic protect and expand the system that Mexico had threatened. The language of liberty had produced a slaveholding republic. Sam Houston became the hero of San Jacinto, but heroism did not erase difficulty. Texas needed recognition, money, security, and a future. Many Texans wanted annexation by the United States. Some Americans wanted Texas eagerly. Others feared that annexation would bring war with Mexico and intensify the fight over slavery inside the United States. Mexico did not forget. Raids, counter-raids, diplomatic protests, and military alarms kept the borderlands tense. The Republic of Texas claimed the Rio Grande as its southern and western boundary. Mexico treated the Nueces River as the real edge of Texas. Between those rivers lay a vast disputed space. That disputed space would become one of the immediate triggers of the Mexican-American War. This is why the Texas Revolution belongs inside the story of the Mexican-American War. Gonzales, Bexar, the Alamo, Goliad, the Runaway Scrape, and San Jacinto did not cause the 1846 war by themselves, but they created the unresolved republic that the United States would later annex. They created martyrs and myths that shaped American public imagination. They created Mexican anger that did not fade. They created a boundary dispute that politicians would later turn into a military crisis. When the United States annexed Texas in 1845, it did not annex a quiet territory. It annexed a revolution's unfinished business. In the next episode, the story moves from battlefield victory to international crisis. The Republic of Texas, annexation politics, manifest destiny, Mexico's refusal to accept the loss, James K. Polk's ambitions, and the disputed strip of land where two nations would soon send soldiers. The canon at Gonzales had asked whether Mexico could command obedience in Texas. San Jacinto answered that Texas could break away. But the larger question remained unanswered. What would happen when the United States took Texas into itself, and Mexico refused to accept that the story was over?